Go.
From sophomore year of high school to senior year, I put all of my time and effort into a horse that nobody thought would make it. His name was Fallon, and he experienced a really serious pasture accident where he went neurological and basically couldn't move his legs like other horses could. Vets couldn't figure out what was actually wrong with him. He was still eating, he was still drinking, and he was still standing up sometimes to go to the bathroom, which are all red flags. Eventually one day, Fallon, after 5 weeks of him laying on his side and being pumped with painkillers, Fallon stood up and showed no signs of injury whatsoever. That's when our training actually began. He was 4 years old when our training happened, but he didn't get into a more serious schedule until he was about 5. It took about 3 years to achieve any semblance of elegance. He was goofy, he was awkwardly shaped from his baby years, and he had no athletic ability after his accident. Training, basically for horses, begins the day that they're born. Owners will touch and rub all over their legs, they'll brush horses, they'll start to clip them with clippers to get them used to things like that. Saddles aren't usually put on horses' backs until they're about 2 years old, but normally not ridden until about 3. Dr. Deb Bennett produced a study in 2008 that stated that racehorses begin training and racing at about 18 months old and never get the chance to grow and mature like they're supposed to. Horses aren't done growing and their skeletal systems aren't done maturing until they're about 5 years old. So any kind of stress or training done for the horses before then causes growth issues in the future. Not only is the age of horses important when training, the initial process of putting a young horse under saddle can make or break their future careers. So how do you break a horse? Simply putting a saddle on them and putting a person on them can do it. Lisa Gurdon-Dilworth, my longtime trainer, said that a horse will let you know when they're ready to be broken. If a horse handles stress well and they have a mental capacity that can handle it, then they tend to do better. If a horse is flighty or nervous whenever you put a saddle on them, then the process seems to take longer and is not as productive. The process of putting horses into a pen and having them get used to saddles and get used to people is essentially the breaking process. Breaking horses, no pun intended, makes or breaks their future in training. If they are broken poorly, then they tend to not trust humans, and it makes them much more difficult in the future. But if done properly, then future training tends to go a little smoother. The refinement process is what I've been doing and hope to do in the future. Western and English disciplines refine differently. It all depends on what their discipline is and what they're participating in. Cow cutting in the Western discipline requires an extremely intuitive horse that can know what a cow is doing before the cow even knows how to do it. Thoroughbreds for racing have to have a high endurance as well as not being afraid of anything going outside of the arena. Eventers, what I was training Fallon to do, have to be courageous, they have to be trustworthy, and they have to have a ton of skill to do what I was asking them to do. Fallon had to learn how to jump. He had to learn how to be elegant, and he had to learn to engage parts of his body that probably he didn't feel after his accident. Going back to the simple things and gaining confidence in his own movements was super important because he started to sponge on the things that were simple whenever he learned more difficult tasks. Fallon and I experienced a plateau in our training when I had a really bad accident off of him. We no longer trusted each other. We couldn't go out and compete without without breaking our trust together. Eventually, we had to do things that we were good at. We had to build confidence. We had to work on things that we knew how to do just to keep our training going forward. Eventually, we got better. We started competing, and people realized that we were doing okay. We eventually gained a small sponsorship from Roden & Fields and started doing clinics and more competitions, and we started proving our training and stuff that I had been doing for years now. Now Fallon is teaching a little girl the ropes of eventing, how to have fun with the sport and how to do it safely. Not only did my training teach him, but he's also teaching people to